My name is Kerry Nares and I'm the National Head of Technical Education at the Education and Training Foundation. The Education and Training Foundation is the expert body for continuing professional development and standards in the FE and training sector in England. I'm a qualified science teacher and a STEM ambassador, and I've worked in the FE and training sector for over 27 years. So growth in science for me could be growing passion and enthusiasm of learners for wanting to study science so that there are more learners progressing to higher levels of study and employment. It means growing scientific literacy within communities so that more people understand the world in which they live and can contribute to informed debate and actually understand what's being asked of them. We saw this during COVID-19, people understanding whether they should have the vaccination, not have the vaccination, what are the implications of that. And I think by improving literacy, by improving inclusivity and accessibility, particularly through the media as well, making science learning more accessible. And that certainly happened through COVID, because we're seeing many more young people think that because they understood where science could take them, and because things were simplified for them to learn that and understand them, they are now considering careers in science. And we're seeing that reported, the increased uptake. So we need growth in science literacy. We need to increase and diversify the talent pipeline so that we've got many more people, whether they're young, adult, employer or HE learners, progressing to higher levels of technical STEM study or employment where we know we have recognised skill shortages. In primary and secondary school, I think it's really important that learners have access to STEM ambassadors and employers that can bring the line of sight to work really to life so they can understand the roles that exist. But, especially when there is low science capita within some families. But more so than the positive role models, although that's extremely important, it's how you get learners from a young age to develop their curiosity and to enjoy practical science, whether that's in the classroom or outdoor. Because if learners are enjoying themselves while learning science, they're more likely to want to study and progress with their science learning. And then along with that employer input, if you can get the real world context and them thinking how exciting those careers could be, that's really the next step to making sure people progress. I think quite often the challenge with student uptake of science, really, and growing our STEM talent pipeline is the fact that sciences are perceived to be difficult and subjects that other people would do, even if they enjoy them at a younger age. And I think something about that is to do with science capita in the home. But another part of it is to do with whether they've had access to positive role models, whether they're positive female scientist role models, making sure there's access to role models that can show that it could be everybody's next step to progress to higher levels of technical study or employment in these industry sectors. So I think there's a greater awareness now of making sure that there are positive role models for all, whether that's about gender, whether it's about SEND, Black and ethnic minorities, socio and economic groups, everybody aware that the importance is that you diversify to grow the technical STEM talent pipeline. Because if it's not diverse, we're losing some of the potential that we would have for our solutions in the future. So I think, there is an understanding from the evidence base that we now need to be more inclusive and accessible, and the careers education advice and guidance, making sure that everyone can see the pathways to progression from an early age. So whether that's at primary school, secondary, whether it's employers, teachers, parents, guardians, everyone's supporting individuals to think what could be their next step to achieving their aspirational goals, whilst really aligning that with what we need within our communities and the skills we need to grow for a sustainable economy. So there's a great deal of support out there for educators at all levels, whether we're talking primary, secondary, or FE teachers, really, or those that support learning. So, for example, the Gatsby Charitable Foundation, along with the work with John Holman and the Careers Enterprise Company, they've worked with all sectors to make sure that students are having meaningful encounters with employers, to make sure that that is prioritized to bring learning to life, and that's through the Gatsby benchmarks. And that means that from primary school, it begins then that learners are having encounters with employers. So they're seeing potential roles that they could progress into and having fun learning experiences with people who are working in the industry who can bring that learning to life.